It's going a little slow this morning. Hasn't quite kicked in yet. Good afternoon, everyone. Um, I'm very honored to have a special guest with us today on Facebook. I'm trying to learn how to get him on a video conference call, but I'm still learning. I'm still in the queue. But he is with us on audio, on the audio side. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Walter Stickle. And
and being able to share a little bit in the days we live in. Well, the thing that I'd like to talk about today is I started a web page back in 2011, and so it's been up there over 10 years now. And it's when I start thinking about it, I said, where do I start? But
just for everyone's knowledge, that's granddesignexposed.com. If you want to go visit that website while Walt's talking about it, it's granddesignexposed.com, and you'll get your boat loaded. There's a lot on that website. So,
well, and of course, there's a lot on that. There's a lot on that website that we can't talk about either, because matter of fact, well. Every time you've invited me, Larry, I stop and thinking of where do I start? Well, I'm going to kind of I put a book together. It's called The Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy, and how the book came about. Yeah, how the book came. There's book 1 and book 2. Larry's showing you 2 different books there. Book 1 is a book about Mystery Babylon religion and where it came from. And and also I want to say, you don't have to buy the book. You can go to my webpage at Grand Design Exposed. And the website is granddesignexposed.com, and you'll see my book page. The book, there's several places, more than one link to get to it, but at the very bottom left, there's a picture of the Capitol of the United States, and you'll see it. Just click on the book, and it'll take you to. I have put up there 4 books. I have 4 books on my page, and the kind of the best way to say, well, what's your website all about? Well, the best way is to go to the website, because it's actually if I put the whole web page in a book, it would probably be about a 300-page book. See, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll click on it. You'll see the picture at the bottom left-hand corner. Click on it, and it'll take you to my book loading page. And I have 4 books up there. And you'll scroll down and you'll see the pictures of them. The first book on the left is The Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy. And then the book to the right is The Papacy is the Antichrist, a demonstration by J.A. Wiley. And then there's Mystery Babylon, which is the New Babylon and the ancient Rome. You'll see the covers. I think, you know, when I put these books together, I was quite fluent, you might say, in pictures. But since I did the books when I put the books together when what was it? It was a Windows. I can't remember the
Windows 98,
but any,
or I think number 6. Windows 6.
The one after 98.
6
was yeah. Well, anyway, when the new Windows came out, a lot of these, everything went past me. I mean, I lost my ability to manage pictures. And anyway, those are 4 books that I put into book form. In other words, so anyway, I'm going to try to do a little bit better job here. I know I'm kind of holding you up a little bit here, but what got me started was an author. His name is Ronald Cook. I would call Ronald Cook a Reformation historian. He wrote 2 volumes on Antichrist Exposed, the Reformed and Puritan View of the Antichrist. 2 volumes, and it's a historical history of the papacy. So and what inspired me to he wrote a little pamphlet, just a little pamphlet. It was only 60 pages, and it was called The Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy, and that's what I call this book, because this book is a study page. It's a study of something that's not talked about. You know, it's history that's not rewritten, but history that's been left out of the history books. And the history, you know, is the Jesuits' profound influence on the founding documents of America, including the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, but the virtual takeover of America as we can see clearly today in 2021. Because today, we are highly influenced, and our capital is an image of the papacy, the beast. And of course, this was the history of the original 13 colonies. The original 13 colonies, less than 1% of the population were Roman Catholics. And Larry and I have did a broadcast. It's up on my website. You'll see it 2 or 3 different places. Larry we did a broadcast with York Glisman and Dave Baxter and myself, and I read a booklet about the Catholic founding fathers. And you say, the Catholic founding fathers? Well, I've never heard about the Catholic founding fathers. Well, you've never read Catholic material, because it is the Roman Catholics understand the founding of this country, and that they were instrumental. They were just as instrumental in starting this country as the original founding called founding fathers. And when you go up to my webpage, when you go to my webpage, now there's I think there's 40 total buttons. There's on the left. Yeah, there's 40. And button 20 is the Catholic founding fathers. And the Catholic
I've just put up a link for everyone. All of our Facebook friends, you now have a link to Walter's website, Grand Design Exposed. I've just placed that up there for you, so it's easy access. You can just go directly to it from the link on Facebook.
I think you'll find if you enter into this research here, you'll find it very, very interesting, because this article that I have up there is by Charles Carroll Carter, and I just want to say this is the introduction to it. He says George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, John Madison, Patrick Henry, Benjamin Franklin. Nearly every school child recognizes them as the founding fathers. But there were a great many more founding fathers, even if their names are not so familiar as the above. Several of these lesser-known men who played key roles in the creation of the United States of America were Catholics. Now, this is written by Roman Catholics, so this is not an unbiased. In other words, this is not an anti-Catholic, website. This is because they know their history, and at the very top, you'll see the Catholic founding fathers on sermon audio put up there. I believe it was. I forget just what year it was, but it was around 2017 or 16. And I find it very, very interesting because it's ignored. I mean, the first, I just want I want to try to interest you into looking into the founding of America, and it's a lot of things can be said, but just look into it, what really happened versus what we've been told happened. I just heard a little caption in an article I was reading. All about the fake. We all hear about the fake news. Donald Trump. He pounded fake news. But nothing's ever said about fake history, because the founding of America, as I was told, was fake history. I didn't even understand. I mean, I'm 78 years old, and I didn't have any idea what a Protestant was. You see, the word Protestant is called Protestant today. It's not the way you pronounce it. It's Protestant. And what is it protesting? If you look into the definition of Protestant, you'll see that it's protesting Roman Catholicism. and and uh, and then the book, the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy, Book 2. And like I said, you can go up there right now and read this book right off the internet on a PDF file. Matter of fact, you can take it down and have it printed in a print shop, and it's in book form, you know. And so you know, it's kind of, I could write a book could be written about the introduction of this book, how I put this together, because what got me interested in the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy. Well, I'll tell you why. When you buy the Vatican, if you get the book, the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy, Book 2, you'll see at the top of the picture 2015, and you'll see a snake curling around the top of the Capitol building in Washington D.C. with a Pope at the top. Well, this is a picture that was in a book that was written, Washington in the Lap of Rome, in 1888. See, people understood, even when President Kennedy was running for president, he even spoke to a group of Protestant ministers down in Houston, Texas, and he promised that he was not going to take orders from the Pope. Because you see, the Pope is a political leader. I mean, they have an ambassador over here. I mean, you know, as I start talking about this, I just get swamped because I realize that the average person doesn't understand that Rome is a country. In other words, it's a religion. It's a political country. It's a political country representing a religion. Roman Catholics. Roman. It's the Roman Catholic Church. You know, it's Roman. Well, anyway, you'll find it. I think you'll find it. So what happened? And the reason I got interested in it, I said to myself, gosh, Ronald Cook wrote this book in 1985. And he didn't realize that on September 24th, 2015, that a Jesuit Pope was going to come speak to a joint session of Congress. And there's a lot to see on my website because I cover this. The author of Grand Design Exposed, John Daniels, he's passed away now, but he wrote an article when the Pope came over here and spoke. Now, this is when Benedict came, is when he wrote this article. I mean, this happened right on the at the White House, in the, you know, facing the obelisk. I mean, the Pope spoke, you know, and met with the President Bush, the first one, you know. But one of the reasons I'm talking about this is you know, the Catholic founding fathers, the Carroll family, Charles, John, and Daniel, were very instrumental in the founding of this country. And it's history that's been left out, just left out. I find it interesting. Oh, really? And of course, here's Walt. I mean, I'm 78 years old, and now, and of course, well, you know something, I wanted to ask this question. I want to ask this question to everybody that's listening. And just kind of just be honest with yourself. And I'm going to ask Larry to comment on this right now. Larry, how old were you when you understood who a Jesuit was?
Well, the first exposure I got
When you
to
understood the word Jesuit.
the first exposure I got to it was from my brother, who told me about the Black Pope. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what he meant. I didn't know what he was talking about. And so he exposed me to Jesuitism, and that was when I was 37 years old.
Well, maybe, Larry, maybe your mic's muted, but
yeah, I
when
don't
was
know
the
if you
first
can hear me.
time? So I'm going to ask the listeners right now. When was the first time that you, in your life, when you were growing up, and if you weren't Catholic, when was the first time you understood who a Jesuit was?
Can you hear me now, Walt?
See, the reason I bring that up is like let me speak for myself. I grew up, went to Washington D.C. I went to an engineers. Go ahead, Larry.
Can you hear me now? I don't know if you can hear me now, Walt, or not. Sorry, but I do have my mic unmuted, so I don't know why you can't hear me. Go ahead.
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I was just trying to answer your question earlier. Yes, the first time
I can hear you.
The first time I was exposed to Jesuits was by my brother when I was at 37 years old.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, so I was talking to my brother one day, and he said the people that are running this country are the Black Pope and the Jesuits, and I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. And I was 37 years old, and he exposed actually what the Jesuits were up to. So my first exposure to the Jesuits was by my younger brother. So.
My first hearing the word Jesuit was listening to a radio broadcast, Greg Samaski, and he had a lot of guests on, that that were talking about the influence of Roman Catholicism, because nobody ever talks about this issue. It's something that's just not. It's amazing how this has happened. And by the way, in book two, you see, I have 7 different authors in this book. And why 7 authors? But there's very, very few authors that talk about the influence and the founding of America. See, our founding fathers, not all of them, but they were, George Washington and they were deists. I mean, Thomas Jefferson. You know, it was because and excuse me for getting kind of but it's kind of overwhelming when you see how instrumental and how much of an influence that Roman Catholicism has on America. Because see, Georgetown, the first Catholic university was founded in Washington, D.C., a couple blocks from the Capitol. It's kind of, and see, and the contents of this book, we have Robert Cook, Ronald Cook, Tupper Saucy, and we have an author. We have Michael de Semblin. Each one of these chapters is not. There's a couple chapters on each one, but one chapter on page 93 is how America became a Jesuit enclave. Because see, today the United States has 28 Jesuit universities. 28. See, this is out of Code Word Babylon Danger in the Vatican in chapter 31. See, the whole chapter of 31 is in this book. A most colossal conspiracy against the United States. Now, I do not like the resurrection of the Jesuits, the former U.S. President John Adams said in 1816. This was a quote from John Adams. And so this is the first paragraph of this chapter. He says, "We now come to another highly interesting portion of American history, which you would be hard pressed to find in the history books. The part played by the Jesuits in the American Revolutionary War, the War of Independence in 1776, 1783. We have seen the role of the Jesuits in the American Civil War, but what part, if any, did they play in the early war that transformed America from a collection of independent states to a United States of America? The uninformed or partisan historians will tell us that the war was mainly, if not entirely, due to the arbitrary and intolerable acts of the British government, leading into the American colonies' desire to break with British rule. I will now venture to shed some light on the dimly reported aspect of the American history and offer you in a very different and we hope more correct view that religion played a major role in the American Revolution is beyond dispute. In 1776, at the time of the Declaration of Independence, there was little over 23 priests in all, and the next highest authority was the Vicar Apostolic in London, who had jurisdiction over the British colonies and satellites in America. The American Revolutionary War of Independence soon changed that, because you see, up until 1776, the Roman Catholics couldn't say Mass in public, and I have actually. I was on a broadcast, and this gal had this broadcast years ago. Lori's Talk News Radio. She had all the constitutions of the colonies, and right in their constitution, Roman Catholics couldn't hold office. Gosh, that would put Joe Biden out of business. you know, because I can't think of I can't, every president, starting with really kind of starting with Nixon, everything from JFK, everything went downhill from there. But every president has got they've kind of made a mockery of the presidency, because you go from Nixon to Clinton, and then the Bushes, and then Obama, and the biggest clown of them all, I don't think you can get a bigger one. I thought, than Donald Trump, until they put Biden in there. It's beyond belief. I mean, because see what when you have to understand, we have to understand that nobody's being elected. Trump wasn't elected the first time. He didn't beat Hillary. They put Trump in there, and he didn't win the first one, and he didn't win the second one, because we haven't had an election. But anyway, I don't want to start off on that, because there's and in the Bible it says that all the governments are conspiring. They all have a space program, and now they're trying to drum up a war. They're trying to drum up a war with Russia, and it's all contrived. It's all theater.
What about the China balloon? Tell me about that.
I mean, you can't get serious about this stuff. This is it's all theater. But let's go back to the book. You know what? Every time I try to talk about this, I get overwhelmed. There's so much evidence that Rome's influence on America.
Would you like to read the introduction for us?
Well, let me go back to the introduction. Yes. Let me go back to the introduction. Because remember what I was telling you about Ronald Cook. When reading this book, remember, Ronald Cook wrote this in 1985. The world did not have a Jesuit pope. The founding of the Jesuits in 1534 was to counter the Reformation. Now, on September 24th, 2015, a Jesuit pope, counter-Reformation in parentheses, is coming to America to speak to a joint session of Congress. What does this tell us in 2015? It reveals that the Christians are under a strong delusion with the teaching of futurism, and are unaware that the biblical, historical, and prophetic Antichrist is coming to address the lawmakers to celebrate the completion of the Jesuit counter-Reformation of America. And that's what they were doing. They were celebrating. And matter of fact, when the Pope left the White House, he went to New York. He went to New York Stadium because, see, they weren't able to say Mass in public. Well, they went to New York and they filled Yankee Stadium, and they had their Mass. Now understand, this introduction is not to take away from the author and the points made in this book. But remember, the author didn't know that in 2013 we would have a Jesuit pope. When writing the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy, he had no idea that in 2015 the Jesuits would have complete charge of the Vatican, and the Jesuit Pope would speak to a joint session of Congress in 2015. he got 29 standing ovations. So when you read this, realize that the conspiracy is alive, well, and proceeding on schedule. Now, this is. Let me see what we're doing for time here. How much time we got left here, Larry?
We've got about 24 minutes left.
Okay, well, now this is very, very interesting. I've got to paint the picture. Back when I was driving truck years ago, I bought a book called Non-Dare Call It Conspiracy. By Gary Allen. Are you familiar with that book, Larry?
Yes, yes.
It was a very popular book, very popular. And what it did to me when I read it the first time is I realized that there's a conspiracy. See, and Ronald Cook mentions author Gary Allen's book Non-Dare Call It a Conspiracy, using the Black Pope. Now this is you have to understand, if you don't know who the Jesuits are, Gary Allen, he used the Black Pope, Pedro Oropi, to identify conspiracies and gave us the agenda of the conspirators. Here's a quote from the Black Pope, Jesuit Pedro Oropi. He actually used the Black Pope to define conspiracy. I don't know if you're getting the gist of this, but this shows how ignorant the public is. I mean, and he sold a lot of books. That was a very, very popular book. And of course, at the time, I didn't even, when I bought the book, I didn't know who a Jesuit was. I'll tell you what happened to Andrew White prior to 1776. They found a Jesuit here in the colonies. They put him in chains and sent him back to England. The early colonies knew who Jesuits were. And you know, and at the very top, the Black Pope tells us the definition. The Black Pope says, quote, "This godless," now he's talking about this conspiracy. It's like calling the kettle black, you know. "This godless society operates in an extreme efficient manner, at least in the higher levels of leadership. It makes the use of every possible means at its disposal, be they scientific, technical, social, or economic." And what other organization? I'm open for this question. What other country in the world has 28 Jesuit universities? And the favorite tool of the Jesuits is misdirection, getting somebody focused on something. And here they are talking about this conspiracy group. He finishes, "It follows a perfectly mapped out strategy. It holds almost complete sway in international organizations, in financial circles, in the field of mass communications, press, cinema, radio, and television." See, this is the only thing that I wrote in this book. I wrote the introduction to this and authors to expose everything I'm talking about. And what are these authors exposing? Is Rome's part in the founding of America? And you know, because see, how do they work? They don't work with guns and tanks. You know, just a second here, too. I want to plug my mic in.
By the way, while Walt is doing that, if anyone wants to get a hard copy or a paperback copy of this book, just go to lulu.com, Lulu.com, and put in the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy. So while Walt was off there, I just wanted to let everyone know, if you want a paperback copy of this book, just go to lulu.com, Lulu.com, and put in the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy, Walt Stickle, and you can actually get a copy of both of these books, and they're relatively inexpensively priced, and that way you can actually have a copy for yourself. Go ahead, Walt.
Well, thanks, Larry, because, yes, buy the truth and sell it not.
That's right.
In other words, we're not trying to sell books here this morning. I'm trying to interest, because if you read these books, there's 7, especially the book that I'm holding right now, there's 7 different authors, very, very prominent people that did a lot more research than Walt had done. And the Black Pope, Pedro Rupi, gives a perfect description of how the biggest conspiracy on the earth works. He's actually describing how Satan operates the Vatican. Jesuit global conspiracy. Now, this is a very important point. Remember, Gary Allen's book is about the global conspiracy operates in the world. We have to see what is being done here using Jesuit casuistry and sophistry. By having the Black Pope, Pedro Rupi, in Gary Allen's book, takes the eye off of the Jesuits completely, misdirection, and allows them to operate the global conspiracy unseen. Because the puppet masters, the Jesuits, are behind the curtain, pulling the strings. It's like the pot calling the kettle black. The book, None Dare Call a Conspiracy, is taking the focus off of the real conspiracy by using the Black Pope, Pedro Rupi, to give the definition of conspiracy. It's amazing. And Walt, I bought the book. And I'd be out in the truck, and I used to listen to Tex Mars. And Tex Mars, I learned an awful lot about the Jesuits. And not the Jesuits. No, he didn't talk about Jesuits. But he I learned this is a real good point, because this is part of my learning a little bit about. I didn't understand the founding of America at the time, but I learned from Tex Mars about the Freemasons. I didn't know anything about Freemasons. And listen, this mystery, the Bible calls it the mystery Babylon. It's not one organization. It's not just the Masons. It's not just the Zionists. It's not just but the directors. What organization of the Masons, Jewish, are educators? What's running our culture right now, and all the crazy stuff that we see going on in our society, our children are learning this stuff in college. This is where they get their faith taken away. And the Jesuits are the top educators.
Yeah, Georgetown University is known as the foreign policy makers for the United States government.
Absolutely not, and that's a good point. I just want to, if you go to my my webpage, the very top, the very top is at the very top. You'll come across the very top. If you'll see a picture of a graphic picture of the Jesuits' connection to 1776 and the founding of America. And then you scroll down, and we don't want to talk about the, we don't want to get scroll down because and you'll come to who controls the U.S. government, the hour of the truth. Rome never changes. See, when you come to that, click on that, and it'll show you a video. It'll show you a video by York Lisman, and he's a German, and he lives in Belgium and does exceptional research. And he calls it the Devil's Playground in Jesuit Georgetown University. And I want to read a paragraph that I wrote right next to that. This is a must listen. You'll understand the influence of all the speakers. They all go to Georgetown University. I mean, they speak to Georgetown University. I can't even begin to explain to you the influence that Georgetown University has on foreign policy. Because let me read that to you. We also look at the enormous financial resources that the Vatican possesses and the billions of which are at its disposal. We also look at the part that the Jesuits play in helping to implement the goal of the Vatican. In our travels and teachings, we find that there is almost a total blackout concerning the sinister aspirations of the Vatican and the Jesuits. Men who purports to write on the great conspiracy that is out of control, is out to control the world, not only never mention the Vatican, but if they do, they make the Vatican out to be the target of the conspiracy rather than the originator of the conspiracy. We must always remember that the Jesuits created Zionism using Jesuit casuistry and sophistry, which brought on a Jesuit lie of dispensational futurism, which gives us the new futurist Zionist theology. I got that last statement out of Ed Henry's book. There is the new futurist Zionist theology. Because see, Zionism is not just religion. Zionism is an ideology. Look up the definition of Zionism, and also if you go to my front page and scroll down, you'll come to a picture of President Eisenhower, Dwight D. Eisenhower, with Father Edward Bunn at Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., unveiling the bust of Reverend Edmund A. Walsh. Because see, Edmund Walsh was the founder. Edmund A. Walsh of the School of Foreign. He was the founder of the School of Foreign Service of Georgetown University. And if you click on that source link, you'll see that Edmund Walsh, he'd been to Russia. It's amazing where he had been. In other words, World War II, the war room was Georgetown University. and Rome was right in the middle of that. And we don't have to, I mean, it's because the Bible says, see the beast. I mean, all the wars in this world, all the, the Vatican doesn't have an army. They have all the armies in the whole world. See, you can't think small. You can't think there's one little group over here that's causing all this. It's people. These people are doing it. No, these people are doing it. I mean, no, it's orchestrated. It's a theater of war. Even during World War II, they used to show in the theaters. They called it the theater of war, and that's what's going on in Russia right now. They are orchestrating. They are putting together World War III. It's but in other words, but I just want to let you understand the influence of the Jesuits in America. And if you'll click on that source link there on my front page, you'll come to a web page that is because I give you the speech that on October 13th, 1958, that Dwight D. Eisenhower, came and presented the bust of Walsh, and I ask questions, and I ask 8 questions. I don't give you my political opinion, but I ask a question. Give you an example. We have to ask ourselves, what is so special about Walsh that a president of the United States would be so involved in a foreign service at Georgetown University, at a Jesuit university? See, I'm asking the question, what was Walsh's involvement going to Russia in 1923? Why was Walsh by the side of General MacArthur in Tokyo in 1948? See, why was he the consultant to the U.S. Chief of Counsel at the Nuremberg trials in 1945 and 46? I'm not going to read all, but why have the Jesuits been kicked out of 80 countries? History tells us they were kicked out for meddling in government affairs. Could it? Another question: could it be the same reason that there's a Jesuit Pope occupying the Vatican? I mean, in other words, you have to ask you. You don't want my political views. This morning I've tried to present show you the influence that the Jesuits have in the world, and that the Vatican is not just a local church. It's a church that's over the whole world. It's in South America. South America is Roman Catholic, and so is North America now. It didn't start that way.
Yeah, Walt, we're coming down to the end of the broadcast, and I just want to say that the question that I would have to ask all of our listeners, and that is, how is Roman Catholicism, how is it treated, how is it accepted in evangelical churches today? Before Richard Bennett passed away, he exposed the Evangelicals and Catholics Together movement. There is no protest left in the United States. It doesn't matter which denomination you're talking about. They will not take a position against the Roman Catholic doctrines. They have fully accepted them into their ranks. It's like my father told me when he was about 80 years old, Larry, there will come a time when all these churches will be under one umbrella, and that's exactly what we have today. And the Jesuitical influence is what has caused this to come about. And so now we do believe that God is sovereign over all of these things, and He has actually revealed this in the book of Revelation as to what is happening with the beast. The beast system, like Walt has said, the beast has risen. And why are people not talking about this today? That is our question. That's why we're talking about it, because nobody else is. And so that's really, in a nutshell, what we want to do is expose the beast of Revelation. All the reformers exposed the Pope for who he was, and that was Antichrist. And nothing's changed today. So that's kind of my summation, what Walt has talked about today. You can get these two books either by going to lulu.com, or you can get them, download them right directly from Walt's website, granddesignexposed.com. And I'm going to have to bring this kind of to a conclusion. Walt, do you have any final remarks before we close this out?
We'll see all of the reformers. What's going on today is the extinguishing the light of the Reformation. The Reformation gave us the King James Bible. That's how we got the King James Bible. And there's been so much negative things written about the King James Bible. That King James was a homosexual. I mean, he wasn't accused of that. He wasn't accused of that until 25 years after he died. I'm telling you, they would have not accused King James of that when he was alive. Trust me. And it's ridiculous. See, it creates it's like Donald Trump calls it fake news, and of course, listen, don't think I'm drinking. No, I'm not drinking any Trump Kool-Aid. Okay. I mean, he has finally, God's used him to show me that politics, Babylonian politics, is all rigged. They're all in bed together.
Right.
And I'll tell you, it is kind of depressing when you realize because I used to always say this. I'll guarantee you one thing, that the next president will be worse than this one, and this one here is going to be a hard one. But I mean, they really got a handful with old Joe Biden. That the other night when I did listen to the what do you call it, the address, when they speak to the. But
well, listen, Walt, thanks again. I'm going to have to conclude this out. And Walt will be with us, God being in the matter, by the grace of God. We'll be back again next week, the same time, same place. We're down to the end now, so I'm going to have to bring this to a conclusion. Walt, thanks for joining us today. And again, I would encourage all of our listeners to go to granddesignexposed.com to get all the information you need to further your study in this matter. Well, I'm going to say goodbye for now. Let me go and conclude this broadcast.
Okay, Larry. Okay, and I appreciate. And God bless, and I just it's I just there's only one answer to all of this, and it's in God's